Thank you, and thanks for having me. And this presentation was a little rushed, as Frank said, but I hope to give you just a small snapshot of biodiversity citizen science with a bit of a focus on the ALA. I live and work on Gadigal land, which is a part of Sydney. And particularly the events over the past couple of days, I think reflecting on how Indigenous people think about time has really helped me. So this is from the Conversation article where Indigenous people embrace a deep, expansive understanding of non-linear time, and that helps give context to disasters and other, well, we could say global events. So we must all think of ourselves not just in biographical time, inhabiting one lifespan, but rather of the future generations to come and those long before us. So if anyone else is struggling, perhaps thinking about how Indigenous people see time and very much a very long time scan, and something like 4 years is but a blip in time, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So moving on to the ALA, we get a lot of people asking us who our users are, and I just thought I'd put this up front, that we do have a huge variety and breadth of users. Obviously, as you may have guessed, the majority are from the science and technical services, but we do have people visiting us from lots and lots of different industries. And what I should have also said is the ALA, we are Australia's largest open data biodiversity aggregator for people that don't know. And we pull data from about 850 data providers on a regular basis. We're NCRIS funded. So this is some work, and Annie has been asking me for an update, and I will do that, that we published a couple of years ago, but we wanted to understand what the percentage of citizen science data was in the ALA, so we partitioned the data into non-citizen science and citizen science is in the green. And so a couple of years ago, it was about 50-50 in terms of our total records. I suggest that this is tipped well in favor of citizen science. Just over the past few years, we get about 10,000 records from INAT every week. We do a weekly ingest of INAT, so it's massive and it's growing exponentially. And so we'll move on to this one. Also from the same paper, we wanted to look at how citizen science contributes to our understanding of species distribution, for example. So again, we partitioned our data into citizen science and non-citizen science. This is from the Richmond Birdwing, and you can see that citizen science contributes to our understanding of where the species, range-restricted species, is located. And I think this is really important that we start thinking about citizen science as a complementary source of data and how it can enhance other sources of information. And I think this is actually a very critical message that needs to be communicated. And this is another example where citizen science has doubled our number of known records of the black rock cod, for example, and again, enhanced our understanding of where the species is located. So that's all in that paper if anyone wants to learn more. But moving beyond occurrence records, we also need to start thinking, I think, as a group of individuals interested in citizen science, how we can push the envelope further. And so this is from a recent paper that Jasmine was also on, where we partitioned the different kinds of citizen science and started thinking beyond the occurrence records. And so what sort of information can we enhance to provide, say, more guidance to IUCN species red listing. And so when you're out in the field, I encourage you to start thinking, well, what can I annotate this record? What's the host species? Just what sort of value add can you give to your data that will help inform things that are really important? We've talked a lot about decision making and policy. So some other things that we're doing in the ALA, we're looking at our data and trying to understand our data deficiencies and our data gaps. This is an example of the Myrtle Rust Citizen Science campaign that we ran in March this year, and we're starting to reuse a lot of our resources that were developed. So when Myrtle Rust is on the EPO list, so the environmental pests list, of New South Wales. It affects our native Myrtaceae, about 1,500 native species are affected by myrtle rust, and it is actually driving some localized extinctions. It's actually incredibly serious. And so when we started the campaign, we had about 571 records of myrtle rust. We knew this was an absolute underrepresentation. And so we developed reporting guides, socials, partnerships to try and increase the data of myrtle rust in the ALA. And so what we wanted from a data aggregator, we wanted to show leadership in the invasive species front. We wanted to test the role of how we can incentivize and motivate the public to contribute data. We spoke to a lot of myrtle rust experts, and what they really needed to know was what the host was. So again, thinking beyond just the occurrence record, what other data can you collect that will help decision makers make really important management actions, for example. So they wanted to know the host, and they wanted to know the geographic spread. So it is really widely distributed in Queensland, yet to be recorded in South Australia, but it is absolutely slowly making its way down the eastern seaboard. So we did this, and this is all actually done by Rachel's student, Rebecca. So we got the message out far and wide. We promoted it on socials. We partnered with Costa. We wrote a conversation article, and we put it out everywhere. So through Rebecca's great work with the experts, we also were able to acquire 3 data sets from government and research scientists. And by the end of the campaign, this is not all just citizen science, but we increased our records from 570 to 7,791 records of myrtle rust. And so really this whole initiative was around what can we do as a large data aggregator to identify gaps in our data, and how can we incentivize people to give us more information that will benefit research. So it's been a great example, some really interesting lessons that I can speak more about on the panel though. So, and I wanted to also, and I know I'm going really fast, I'm sorry, speak about our ALA biosecurity alerts. So again, thinking about what can we do with an occurrence record and how can we derive greater impact from it. So we set up the ALA biosecurity alerts a couple of years ago. It's a very simple premise where in most cases, it's a government body gives us a list of species that they're particularly concerned about. Lots of weed species, lots of pests that are already here, but also species that they're worried about coming into the country, such as brown marmorated stink bug. And when an occurrence record comes into the ALA that matches something on their list, we ping them with an email alert. The alerts go out weekly. It is absolutely citizen science that is driving the impact of the alerts because, as I said, we get 10,000 records from iNaturalist every week. It's really the scale and the timeliness of the records that about 99% of alerts are generated out of iNaturalist, for example, or in some cases Nature Mapper and other data providers. And we have had such amazing impact through this, really, again, just sort of linking citizen science with decision-making and management, where we have case studies where we've picked up the first record of a species in Australia, we've picked up changes in distribution, and we've had management agencies identify, for example, weed species, go out and mitigate it, pull up, say, the invasive cacti, and have written to us and said we would never have found this species if it wasn't for your alert system. So it's a really wonderful testimonial. It's probably the biggest citizen science impact that I've been able to achieve through working in this space for a long time. So again, we published that in a paper this year if you want to learn more. And we're also reaching out to local governments now and inviting local government users to join the alerts. And then finally, another thing that we're doing and starting to turn our heads to, again, I mentioned gap filling, but thinking about directive sampling. So how can we encourage or incentivize people to go out into particular locations? And so I think what we can do as the ALA is provide a context in terms of record of intensity and also provide verifiable alternative sources of data. So you hear a lot of critiques about citizen science, but ultimately most citizen science records come with a voucher, which is a photo. And that's actually very rare. In professional settings, we just take it as it is, that this is this species at this time and place. But the value of citizen science, or the majority, is that we can actually go back and check that, change the taxonomy if you needed, and refine the observation, and that's incredibly powerful. And so my colleague Cam looked into this a little bit more, just to see what we can do at the ALA. So this is a species of slender dwarf crayfish. There's only 2 records of it in Australia. It's located there, kind of in New South Wales. And so it's very rare. There isn't enough information to make an assessment about it for the Threatened Species Commission. But what we could do is we could look at all of the other data points that we have for the genus of this crayfish. And we can see that actually the area that it lives in is fairly well surveyed, and those are all of the red points. So those are all of the other crayfish by the same genus. And so we can actually tell decision makers, well, we're pretty confident that the area has been well surveyed. And so we can say, we think that it's possible that this species would have been already picked up if it was there. That's incredibly powerful to try and direct sampling. And so we can guide survey effort. And then we can also say, but this area looks particularly undersurveyed. And what's really interesting is that when we went back into the iNaturalist records of this genus of crayfish that were surveyed from this area, we have at least 2 records that look like they've been misidentified and are very likely actually this species of crayfish. So we can go back to the citizen science record, we can send that to a professional, and perhaps through this one very small example, double the number of observations of an incredibly rare and threatened species in Australia. So I think if we start thinking about citizen science in all these different contexts and how we can use this very rich, very large growing source of information, our understanding of biodiversity in Australia will become much more powerful as a result of citizen science. And that's all. Thank you.